On this week's Mailbag episode, the San Diego Padres get a sweep of the Chicago White Sox, one of the worst teams in the history of the baseball sport, but nonetheless, still a nice series, including a great start from Darvish, Fernando Tatis Jr. showing off some heroics, Darvish making history, some questions about the Padres bullpen, some good, some bad, and then, of course, answering your questions, because it is the Mailbag, so lots to get into, including a question about a buffet, so let's get into it.
You are Locked On Padres, your daily San Diego Padres podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Padres podcast, which is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day for Monday, September 23rd. As always, I am your host with sometimes occasionally, but certainly not always the most, Javier Reyes. You may be familiar with my baseball-related work over at Just Baseball, where I write about not just the Padres, but general baseball, where I'm going to be writing about the most, soon anyway, the most interesting, fun storylines of the entire baseball season for every team soon, so look forward to that. And you can also check out my podcast for them, Baseball versus the World, which is about very silly, evergreen baseball topics. This week, doing a fictional baseball draft, like of all fictional baseball players. That's going to be a lot of fun. Go check out the show at Baseball versus the World on Twitter and Instagram and on YouTube. And me, your boy, you can find me, of course, at Javipeno, Javiipeno on Twitter and at LO_Padres as well for just updates on the show with the latter account. Today's episode, guys, is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.yeah. The right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your baseball rivals. Book today on Booking.com, the official accommodation partner of Major League Baseball. Get the Booking.com app today. A lot of stuff we had to get out of there at the top. I know, it's a long intro, but don't worry. We're pushing. We keep going. We got a lot to talk about on this week because, look, I don't think that there was actually, necessarily anything to learn in this series against the White Sox. However, the sweep did help the Padres because the Padres now are just 2 games back of the Dodgers if they want to go for this division title, because the Dodgers did drop 1 game against the Rockies. So thankfully, or actually 3 games back, my mistake. So that's really cool, but it's really funny because they were so close yesterday's game. Mookie Betts, who I kind of hate, and it has nothing to do with him. I just hate that the only reason the Dodgers got him is because the Red Sox literally just decided we don't care anymore, and they just shipped off the best player they've had maybe ever for nothing. Right? So I hate him because I hate that they got him. The Freddie Freeman thing and maybe in this the Ohtani thing, that's just separate to me. You know what I mean? In terms of Dodgerdom. But the Mookie Betts thing, I'm not even blaming them, and I'm not blaming him. It's just so annoying seeing that guy when he was so clearly supposed to be a Red Sox player for life, and they got cheap and stupid, and look at them now. All they did was give up a multi-time MVP who also helped them win a World Series. But alas, this isn't a Dodgers podcast. Let's talk about yesterday's game first. The Padres winning by a score of 4-2, and frankly, there wasn't too much craziness in this one. Yes, they did give up 2 runs. That is very sad. Given up by Darvish, who goes 6 1/3 in this one, 2 earned runs on 3 hits, and they were very just a little bit of a classic kind of a Darvish start where everything was great, just made 2 mistakes, and he can get hit hard sometimes. This time, top of the 3rd inning, Corey Lee home run, and then top of the 6th inning, Miguel Vargas, who, by the way, the latter of those 2 kind of become a meme lately if you're really deep into baseball land, just because Miguel Vargas, speaking of Dodgers, was a Dodgers player, and all the screenshots of him, whenever you see him at the White Sox games and when he's playing and he's on the bench, he just looks miserable. That must be awful to go from the Dodgers org to the White Sox org, not just in terms of overall morale and actually being on a team that's worth something and doesn't have an owner that's saving money because he needs an extra Porsche or whatever, but rather that you're oh no, and also the Dodgers are good at developing players and the White Sox are not. You know what I'm saying? So that just must be horrible. So in a way, I'm almost happy for Miguel Vargas, but that basically didn't amount to much. 9 strikeouts for Darvish in this one. I don't think that this is the type of team, and usually I don't like using teams and using that to take away from a pitcher's performance. I just don't think that that's a thing we should be doing in baseball, the strength of schedule thing and, oh wow, he did well against this team, unless it's really, really stark. But for me, because I think that these are Major League Baseball teams and anyone can hit anybody at some points. It's just really hard to go that far into ball games. But I will say this is a historically bad White Sox team, so I do put that there. But at the same time, 9 strikeouts is still very good. He looked in control. He was throwing a large repertoire of pitches like he always does, from sweeper, slider, curveball, sinker, splitter, 4-seam fastball, and even threw 1 knuckle curve in there for craps and giggles. But I just think that for Darvish, it's not as much how well he pitched, but just the fact that he has now gone 6 innings straight in 2 straight starts. And that's really good considering all that he's been through. And then he went 5 in the start before that. He's only given up 4 earned runs over his last 3 starts. So I don't necessarily know how he's going to be, but he does look like he is back to himself. And overall, still 3.19 ERA on the season. Yes, he was gone for much of it, but Darvish, when healthy, that's basically the only question. So shouts to him, did very, very well. Jurickson Profar 2 for 3 in this one with 2 RBIs thanks to a home run. That was very fantastic. Fernando Tatis Jr. also hit a home run in this game. He has been on an absolute rampage lately, by the way. Extra base hits, hitting for power, not drawing any walks. That's the one thing about Tatis that has been, I don't know if concerning is the right word, but it's the only thing missing in his game that I think we're kind of used to usually. Right, we're kind of used to him being able to be a guy that's developed a little bit better when it comes to drawing walks. And this is a little bit of a thing that we saw last year too, where he just wasn't as patient at the plate. I think we've seen this year also when he's come back, he's had some at-bats. We talked about this in the game against the Tigers, where they almost made the comeback, when he just gets a little bit antsy at the plate. Still great though, 138 WRC plus on the season, and he's going to be good. It's just a thing to keep in mind that the walk rate isn't as great as we would like it to be, especially back in his MVP season or MVP-esque season when he had 11.4% walk rate. He's at 7.2% right now. Was that fluky? Sure, but overall, Tatis looks great. Just a minor little criticism for him. Other than that, though, that's basically it. Donovan Solano hits a double. Luis Arraez comes in for pinch hit. He hits a double as well. Arraez it's so good that it was really scary, that home plate moment in the last series against Detroit, when he had that weird slide to home plate, but he is fine, thankfully. Not to mention, he came back in that game and ripped a double, but it's just cool to see that Arraez is so fully back, and that is so huge for this team. Because before, he was just like an average hitter who played really bad defense. Now he's a super above average hitter that I think is going to be a pest in the playoffs, and everybody's going to be scared to face him. So, love to see that. But that's basically it, right, overall. You got the Luis Arraez double, Jurickson Profar sacrifice fly, the home run, the Tatis home run. Like, that's basically it from this game. Not much else to report. And then there was Saturday's game. Saturday's game where there also wasn't necessarily too much to report, guys. In that game, Martin Perez, who we got to talk about, and we got to talk about just in general, like how crazy this Padres pitching staff all across the board has been for a while now. Love to see it, but in this game, Martin Perez, 5 1/3 innings, 3 walks, 6 Ks, only gave up 2 hits. Really sharp start for him. I maintain my belief, which is that I don't necessarily think that they unlocked something in him over the time he's been with the Padres. His FIP is still incredibly, incredibly high. I think it's like a 4.9, 4.8, so that suggests he has been getting a little bit lucky. However, I'll take it for now. He has helped this team be better over the course of these last few, these last couple months to get into the playoffs. And I think that if some starter were to get blown up, I could see him being useful in the postseason. And also, it's worth mentioning that he is striking out more batters, so that has been a very, very welcome development. And in general, it's better than what they had before. I mean, there were times this year where they had to put Randy Vasquez, they had to put prospect guy that I'm blanking on, Adam Mazer. Like, this is better than that, and that's a huge plus for this team. The little things matter, folks. And speaking of little things, I thought it was really nice that after Sunday's game, not Saturday's game, we'll talk about that in a second more, that Tatis made a comment about how this is, this is for Seidler. After the game, he gave credit to beloved, this is from AJ Casaval, to beloved late owner Peter Seidler when asked about the Padres' attendance record and the environment at Petco Park this year. It's amazing. It's beautiful. This is what Peter built. We're just taking care of it. Definitely doing it for him. That's great. And the season attendance of 3,314,593 people is a franchise record. Love to see it. And every time you've got fans of those small budget teams that have little breakout seasons, remind them you can be big. Because if Chicago's out here trying to save money and be cheap, the White Sox anyway, that's a bigger market than San Diego. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not trying to even hate. I know I'm the Padres guy, but I'm just saying. So keep that in mind, guys. But before we continue on into my ramblings and nonsensical nonsense, and I promise you a very juicy, fantastic mailbag. You guys came up clutch this week. First, I need to take a second to talk to you about what? Oh, the title sponsor of this show. That is Booking.com, ladies and gentlemen. And here's the thing about Booking.com. This episode is brought to you by them because they can make you a fan of any city, even your baseball rivals. All you have to do is get the Booking.com app. all sorts of stuff with hotels, bed and breakfasts, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more. No matter where it is, they give you all the kind of layouts and everything that you need for your trip, and variety of choices across the United States. You can go incognito if you want. You can hide away if you're going to LA or something like that. If you don't want to be in your baseball city rivals, don't worry though. They've got you covered. And they're really good. Book today on booking.com for sure, guys. Get the app and go vibe. Booking.com, booking.yeah. Next up, FanDuel. We love FanDuel. You guys know about FanDuel. They've been a sponsor of this show for a while. And if you missed out on the last deal, I feel for you, man. I feel for you. But guess what? That doesn't mean you can't still use FanDuel. I don't know what that was. I don't know why it turned into Jabba the Hutt there. But NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. When you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page when you place your bets. And yes, that lovely Sunday ticket deal is done. Hey, I told you it ended yesterday. But you can get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. 5 equals 200. Come on, that's an amazing deal. So go check it out. That's FanDuel.com. Again, America's #1 sportsbook. Go check it out. And just like that, everybody, we are thriving and vibing in segment number 2 of this podcast, continuing the breakdown of this series because we got a lot of things to talk about. But seriously, I love the Seidler comment. If you're a believer in like big narratives and stuff like that, if you're a believer in all that sort of stuff, the Seidler thing adds on to the even more magical part of this season. So rest in peace to the man who was not gravely, bad use of words there, was just paramount to the success of the Padres becoming more of a destination. And that's really all you can ask for from owners, is owners who are like, yeah, we're going to spend. We're not going to be cheap. We don't have to spend $600 million. We don't have to sign Ohtani to a 15-year deal that I frankly don't understand how that happened. But whatever it is, just the fact that you have a guy that's spending and is committed to winning and cares about winning, it's big time. You go look at the Phillies. That's a big thing there. The Mets, there's all sort of teams that having an owner that spends is great. But guys, let's continue talking. Martin Perez, like I said, really solid in this game. I just think that he's more of a playoff break glass in case of emergency guy. But nonetheless, he has been great. Also, in this game, though, Padres just go absolutely ham offensively. 6 runs in this one. Xander Bogaerts by in the second inning. He hits a home run. Really great. Bogaerts is still this weird player that we don't know exactly how to feel about. We talked about him on last week, how he made those 2 errors that were very, very scary. Almost cost us that game. And they had to bring in another relief pitcher. That was really rough. I believe it was Tanner Scott they had to bring in. Thankfully, just for a little bit. It was the Thursday game, I believe. The Wednesday game, I believe. Whenever they had a day off, you guys get my point. But David Peralta also hits a home run in this game. Jackson Merrill gets a single to deep center, allowing Jackson Profar to score. And then Elias Diaz at the bottom of the 8th to officially put the game away. He hits a home run. Absolutely yeeted it, by the way, which was a little bit surprising. The Elias, it just seems like there's no... This sounds like I'm tempting the litigious baseball fates with this one, but it just feels like this Padres lineup doesn't really have any weaknesses. Elias Diaz isn't, Adley Rutschman. He isn't Austin Wells. He isn't like a William Contreras, like a plus offensive player who's even better than some regular position players. But he's just going to be a really solid backup who's not going to hurt you defensively the way that Campuzano was. And as of right now, his hitting is basically just as good as Campuzano's. You know what I'm saying? So love to see that from Elias Diaz. And then Higashioka has been great. Again, I don't really see a weakness in the lineup. The only 2 that you can really point towards are Jake Cronenworth, because he's really bad against lefties, and has also just been not very good. It seems like we talked about this before, seems like the best way to get value out of him is to put him at second base, which they have done a couple times over these last few weeks. And then Xander Bogaerts, who... hey, at least he's got that playoff resume. You know what I'm saying? At least he's a vet, and I feel like he could have a really good postseason. So all that being said, that's amazing. And the fact that you can bring in a Peralta, that you can bring in a Solano, that you have a Rise, that you can bring in all these guys to produce is incredible. The fact that you have Tyler Wade as a pinch runner, if you need him, if you need speed, if you're desperate for that. Just the lineup doesn't really have any holes, and it's great, especially with Tatis back, Manny performing like his MVP self. Just awesome stuff from the Padres in this one. Then there was Friday's game, which was so joyous, ladies and gentlemen. Firstly, starting with the pitching, Mr. Joe Musgrove, absolutely killing it. Musgrove is on a damn mission. Has he had a couple starts where he's gotten blown up since the IL? Yeah. He hasn't been like, it's just kind of incredible that he came back in August and only gave up 1 run in 3 starts. But even still, it was against Pittsburgh. It was against Colorado, so you do wonder. And then he had that absolutely incredible start against the Mets when I'm sure, and my buddy actually, who's a Mets fan, was like texting me like, hey, I don't mean to be mean. I'm not like those Mets fans, but screw Joe Musgrove. To put it, I'm bleeping out the language. But he was like, he's not a believer in that whole, he cheated thing that the Mets fan base, and more specifically SNY, helped perpetrate. And people like Giraffe Neck Mark, some other big Mets fans, try to perpetrate that because they were sad that they lost, which, granted, I get it. I make up BS sometimes when I'm upset too. But, dominated the Mets. A 1-hit, 9-strikeout game. Awesome against them. And then he had a couple bad moments, right, when he got lit up against San Francisco where you're like, what was that? But even the San Francisco start, that was just one bad inning of like what happened. Like his curveball must have just been hanging too much and they were just taking him deep. It was all home runs in just that one inning. And then after that, the 6-inning game, the vengeance game against the 49ers, the Giants, 6 innings, no runs, just 3 hits, 8 Ks. The fact that he's had this level of control has also been amazing. For a guy that we were worried about the injuries, a guy that I was worried about, I was wrong. Like I told you guys, I was worried about the fact that Musgrove, stopped him early last season, and then you bring him up this season and he's still not right. He has to head to the IL, then he has to head to the IL again. That was just screaming problem, but instead, not the case here. 9 strikeouts against the White Sox, completely dominated them, didn't give up a run. He was awesome. Unfortunately, though, despite the Padres scoring enough to win this game from Jackson Merrill hitting a double and Fernando Tatis Jr. hitting a double, which we'll talk about the latter in a second. I forgot. Robert Suarez blows the game in this one. He has been really, really rough as of late. And we're going to talk about him more in the question section because I did get a few questions about him. But Suarez does blow the save in this one. Thankfully, though, Fernando Tatis Jr. does come up and he hits a double to win the game. Walk off yet again for the Padres. Tatis is second in his career as a Padres player, too. And the first one wasn't too long ago. That was the weird one where you saw like his abs and everything. That was so funny. He knows what he's doing. I see you, Tatis. Hey, if I had an immaculate athlete body, I don't know if you guys would ever see me again, frankly, but moving on. That was really, really great. It was electric. Just a great, really great weekend overall. And again, I just want to emphasize something that I talked about last week, which is just enjoying the moment. And yes, they do have this big Dodgers series coming up, but it's still enjoy the moment, be happy, and just be proud that this team completely reversed course in basically every way. And it's fantastic. But now, guys, we got to talk about some questions. And I alluded to one of them. And the first one comes from Zachary Shelton at MovieFansZ1720 on Twitter. And remember, you can send me your questions, and I might answer them throughout the week, especially because we barely have any regular season left, so I won't necessarily save it only for the mailbag, but send me them at Javipeno, JAVIIPENO, or at LO_Padres, or all of your YouTube comments. I do usually pull through those, although I had a lot of regular mailbag questions and some really good ones that I figured we'll just stick with that. We'll go through some of the YouTube comments potentially throughout the week. So you YouTube commenters, don't worry. I see you. I still see you. I got my eye on you. Anyway. Really quickly, guys, let's get into this. I know we won yesterday. This comes from Zachary Shelton. I know he won yesterday, but Suarez worries me. In the last 7 games, he has an ERA of 9. Do you think it might be time after the season to reassess his role? Great question, Zach. And I think it's a fair question. And I don't think that it's just a recency bias thing, because Robert Suarez has been like a really good pitcher this year overall. But if you go by month, like, again, this is a guy who's been not just over his last few appearances, like this is also in August. So beginning of the year, April, 0 ERA, then 0.73, then 2.25, then 2.79, then 4.5, 4.35, and then 6.30. I find it a little bit interesting that his ERA has gotten worse by month every year. Granted, the increase from 0.7 to 2.25 and 2.5 to 2.79, that's not bad. It's still really, really good. But this, once again, goes back to one of the reasons I talked about him early on in the season as being an X factor. And I still think he's a really quality reliever. But I did talk about that. I was hesitant to put him in this elite tier because with as fast as hard as he throws, I do worry about the fact that he doesn't get as many strikeouts and swing and misses as you would like, right? This isn't Josh Hader. Now, Josh Hader did decline a little bit and we beat his butt, and the Angels beat his butt yesterday, by the way. way. So shouts to them. And shouts to the podcast Halo guys over at Locked On Angels, who also were tweeting at me and posting, you're welcome and all that. So very much appreciate that. But I do think that does concern me. And I think it concerns me that, when you get into the postseason and you're facing only the best hitters, is this fastball combination of that he likes to rely on, and the fact that it's not automatic that he can get swings and misses on it, is that going to do well if you have to face the Phillies and Bryce Harper, players like that, guys who crush fastballs? That is something to worry about. I am not worried about reassessing necessarily the closer role. I do think that it has approached the point, though, because of the escalating ERA, because I don't think he was elite, not good. I think he's really great, but elite, like a top 5 guy, class A, those type of guys. I do think it's fair to say maybe it becomes a little bit more matchup oriented. And by the way, that's totally fine. You know why? Because check out who the Padres got at the trade deadline. You know what I'm saying? Like, they are absolutely going to be okay. So I think that sounds bad, but I think reassessing and saying maybe it depends on the matchup, I wouldn't hate that. And I know Suarez wouldn't hate that because he has done so many different roles throughout the season, whether it be getting 4 outs, whether it be pitching in the 8th inning. I think he'd be okay with that, and that's what matters most. And the fact that you have some other guys in this bullpen that have been great, I do like. However, there is something to be said for the closer role. I don't know if we can track it with stats, but there's something to be said with, like, do these guys have experience with it? Jason Adam would be my first pick, only because with Tampa, he did have inconsistent role. And I don't mean that in the bad way. They kind of use a closer by committee. So he's a guy who would maybe be used to being like, okay, sometimes I'll come out in the 7th, the 8th, or the 9th. I think that could happen, but overall, it's definitely worth talking about. Or at least because, hey, what else is there to talk about? This team has basically been perfect for a while now. But guys, we're going to talk about some more questions in just a minute. And you guys sent in some so golden ones. But first, I need to take a second to talk to you about one of our sponsors. And they are, of course, Prize Picks. And remember, folks, Prize Picks, it is the #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. You just got to pick more or less on 2 to 6 stat player projections and watch the winnings roll in. And at least through September, maybe not 2 to 6, because 1 Caleb Williams passing yard. And I know that he hasn't been good so far, but even still, all you need is 1 Caleb Williams passing yard. It gets you 1 win on Prize Picks every week in September. So seize that while we're still in September. My God, has this month gone by fast, and my God, can I not speak. Go check that out, guys. 4 weeks of free W's, and of course, you can 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. It's the best way to get in on the action in most states, including California, Texas, and Georgia. You can play alongside some of their celebrities like Drewski, Joe Budden, Sugar Sean O'Malley, all sorts of people. Check that out, and check out this offer. Locked On MLB, and you get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's Locked On MLB on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. And just like that, everybody, we are back thriving and vibing into the final segment of the show, continuing the mailbag. Oh, that glorious mailbag. Don't you love it? Don't you love doing a mailbag, guys? I do. I certainly do. And I certainly love when you guys send me some fantastic questions. Very much. And another one coming from Mr. Zachary Shelton. He says, next season, would you love to see the chance for the team to wear some older uniforms like the 2000s blue ones or the 90s blue and orange? Dude, I would love that. That would be awesome. And I will say that unlike some other teams where there is like their fan base is like kind of conflicted on literally their actual like literal uniforms. Some fan bases who have City Connects that they genuinely hate. I know that not everybody loves the Padres City Connects, but even still, I will say that the Padres uniforms, home and away, are already great, but I don't think that it would hurt, right? I would love to have a throwback month. I would have a throwback week or day or something like that. What if they did like on a Thursday? You know what I mean? It's social media appropriate. You do it for the content, right? Throwback Thursday. I would love if they did that like once a month next year. I think that would be really fun. It'd be cool just to see what that looks like, because the Padres have always had pretty pretty good uniforms, in my opinion. Even in the back in the day, it's like, well, everybody back in the day, the mustardy brown ones, guess what? Everyone's had, cheesy uniforms at one time or another. So I would love that. I love to have that as a gimmick. Maybe they do some giveaways or whatever. I think it would be great. I will say, though, unlike other teams, it's not like we're dying to have new uniforms. The only time we were dying to have uniforms was that first Manny year with that weird navy blue. It's not only the Manny year, but that was just so generic and bad. And then it was like, okay, let's bring that back to brown and gold. But nonetheless, I appreciate the question, Zach. Next up is another good one. We've gotten 2 of these questions. Let me tell you, folks. Let me tell you. Zachary Shelton, he's killing it. He said, maybe you can use this for the next mailbag episode. I know the season is coming to close in terms of regular season, but what is your favorite part of the season? And also from Maria, at Maria Eaton _1 on Twitter, also favorite Padres moment from the 2024 regular season. So this answers both of y'all. This is hard, and I actually think I'm going to do an episode soon on my favorite moments of the regular season, maybe either this week or next week. It would be late this week, but I'm still going to wait. Yeah, I gotta wait, because we still have like 7 games left, so just in case something magical happens at the end. But so far, I mean, it's tough, right? You have the 8-0 comeback. That was amazing. The 8-0 comeback was, to me, the first, like, the catalyst for what we would find out what the season was going to be, right? The walk-off from Arraez in his first home game, especially against the Dodgers. The entire sequence against the Washington Nationals, I can't really pick one. It could be the Profar walk-off. It could be Keibert Ruiz being a chump and going after him, and then Manny hitting a home run after him, and then Profar hitting the grand slam, and then Cease throwing a no-hitter against them. Like, they just shoved them in a locker for going after Profar. So that was great, right? I think that I think that it's really hard to pick one. I think, you have the Merrill, like, craziness, right? Like, I can't even pick like one single Merrill moment, especially in August when he was just walking off and tying games all the time. I think I'm gonna go for now. I mean, we have the Dylan season. It's so hard. I think I'm going to go with the Profar bases clearing double against the Dodgers on Sunday Night Baseball the day after Will Smith called him irrelevant. Because one, it was really cute seeing the Dodgers fans talk about how classless Padres fans were being for being excited about this. And 2, it was just such a lame thing to say. I will give Will Smith credit because it took him like a month and a half, but he did eventually say like, yeah, that was dumb. And was it some like maybe offhanded comment that even he, after the fact, might have been like, oh, wait, yeah, that was dumb. Why did I say that? But whatever. It's a heat of rivalry. I get it. Heat of the moment. And maybe, but hey, he took it personally and whatnot, and that's what happened. So I think that might be my favorite. But man, is it tough. The back-to-back-to-back, that was great. That was like last week. I almost forget about some of the great moments that this team has had this year. It's just been electric. It really has been. So I don't know exactly which one I think, but I'm gonna go with the Profar vengeance against Will Smith. But look forward to not when I just do a podcast on it, but also probably gonna write about that for Just Baseball. So that'll be a lot of fun. But I think that's my current favorite. I think. Hopefully. Don't hold me to it, but we'll see. Next up, from @Ramamurti, who always sends incredible questions. Questions for Monday's show. Is it time for Padres to apologize to AJ Preller that he knows more about roster construction than we do? And then, what are you most looking forward to as far as the playoffs? Latter question, I'm not looking forward to anything. I'm so nervous. Like, it's just, watching the playoffs can be really nerve-wracking. But in terms of what I'm looking forward to most, obviously, if the Padres win, that's great. I want to see how Merrill produces. I want to see how Tatis delivers. He is known for doing well in the playoffs. But I do think that outside the league, Mets, assuming they're not playing the Padres, I'd root for that. And the Detroit Tigers, by the way, in the American League, just as a consumer of baseball, I follow it a lot. Just their unbelievable rise over these last couple weeks into potentially sneaking into the playoffs at the last second has just been incredible, like, to watch. And I think that's more of a regular season thing. I don't think they're going to go anywhere in the postseason, but that's still incredible. And I think that that's just an amazing storyline. So shouts to that. And then in terms of the first part, do we owe AJ Preller an apology? I don't think so. I think that you have to remember that he's been the GM for a long time and they never won more than 89 games. And I think that there were so many instances. You have so many reports about the clubhouse and how he's a little bit too much of a micromanager and all that. I don't think that means that when we were mad at him, at least when I was upset with AJ Preller, I thought he needed to leave because I just thought some of the culture things, it wasn't a coincidence that they always had these guys who would struggle and they weren't able to develop talent. And then you have a Bogarts contract get thrown in there when you didn't need to. And some might even argue that the amount of contracts they gave out last offseason affected their ability to sign Juan Soto. But I never thought like AJ Preller straight up bad GM. You can't say that because he's made a lot of good moves. Some bad ones, Trey Turner, Eric Hosmer, like he's made some bad ones, like Mike Clevenger. But all in all, he's been at the very minimum like a solid GM who has had moments of absolute brilliance and then moments of absolute horrible, right? So I don't think we necessarily owe an apology. And I do think, and we talked about this last week, the whole Bob Melvin discourse, where like, yes, I am enjoying it. It is kind of fun. I'm not going to lie. But it's not unfair to be like, hey, what do you think could be the problem? The GM who's been the same and is now on his seventh manager, or the two-time manager of the year who also, when he was the manager in 22, won the most games during this stretch, 89 games. So I don't think that that's necessarily, it's a 1-1. I don't think this means that Bob Melvin's the problem. I think that it's just the front office and the Giants don't have a direction right now. But you know, it's hard to say. I think that Preller, you don't necessarily owe an apology. I do think it depends on what your statement was. If your thing was like, wow, this guy stinks, he's a bad GM, then yeah, maybe. But all in all, this has been a really inconsistent squad. Don't let this season distract from that. A very fun squad, but very inconsistent squad and core over these last few years. But still, great question. I want to know what you guys think. Do we owe him an apology? Do I owe him an apology? Am I being a hypocrite? Is Javier lying about how he felt about him just to save face? I'd love to know your thoughts. Last question, and perhaps my favorite question, comes from my guy, assistant to the junior GM on Twitter, at DDKilling3. If the players were food items at a buffet, what would they be? Oh, I love it when you guys get creative and ridiculous with these questions. So I came up with a few, and I feel pretty good about them. So first of all, let me tell you, I love talking about food. I mean, have you guys seen me? Of course I love talking about food. This was actually a little bit harder than I thought. First up, Fernando Tatis Jr., I put down Doritos, Mountain Dew. Like, I know that's not necessarily a buffet, like what you get at a buffet. I don't know. That's just not usually what happens. But basically what I'm going for is the college vibe. Also because I heard a little bit that maybe that's sometimes what he does during games, during spring training. I don't know. Every now and then that might be a thing. He just has that like young kid, doe-eyed, like college kid vibe. So it wouldn't surprise me if my man's is just like, I just want some munchies. I just want some snacks. I want something that just gets me activated, gets me excited, something quick, and then go about my day, which is really funny considering this guy's like a multi-millionaire. And he's still like, I don't know. I just like that visual with Tatis. Next up, it is Manny Machado. A mean steak. Just a steak. Steak, pork chops, anything sort of like that. Obviously, if we were adding even more, maybe a glass of wine. Manny's just a very classy guy. You know, he has that vibe of someone who he ain't necessarily out partying anymore. You know, he's like goes home, wife and kid. You know, he just sits back. I just visualize him at like, you know, some terrace or whatever, and then out into the ocean. And he's just sipping wine, listening to music, or just reading a book. That's just something I think of with Manny. I don't know. That's just me. Next up, Jackson Merrill, just unlimited buffalo wings. That's what I'm thinking. Buffalo Wild Wings style, some spicy wings in there, maybe some garlic Parmesan wings. He just strikes me as like the go after it, like the guy that you're hanging out with on Sunday watching football, and you just ordered a crap ton of wings from Buffalo Wild Wings. That's my vibe for Jackson Merrill. Joe Musgrove. I don't know if coffee's a buffet thing, and I know that's kind of a cop-out because he literally has the Java Joe, that's the nickname and whatnot, but that kind of is how I feel about him. Otherwise, just a good old solid cheeseburger, American cheeseburger, other than the coffee is what I'm thinking of. Not with the coffee, right? That'd be a little bit of a, would it be a weird combination? Yeah, I don't know if it's weird. I don't know if any food combination is weird anymore, do you? You know what I'm saying? After Joe Musgrove, I have you Darvish, a kebab. A kebab. I didn't want to just, frankly, I'm not gonna lie to y'all, I didn't want to just pick like an Asian food. I felt like that would be stereotypical. So I did go with this. If you do want to go with one, maybe sushi, because flavor, all over the place flavor, kebab, all sort of different things on there. You know, a fruit salad perhaps. And what I mean by that is, what is he known for? Having a crazy repertoire of pitches. So some food dish that has a lot of stuff in it, maybe turkey chili bowl, anything like that, that has just a lot of different flavors, is what I'm thinking of for Darvish because of the variety and the way that he operates. So shouts to him very, very much. And he had I didn't write it down, but he had some really beautiful quote the other day. I forgot what it was, and I'm really mad that I don't have it in front of me. Look forward to that on tomorrow's episode. But next one up, Dylan Cease. I just put a soup, something central chicken soup, Could be red tomato soup, just something calming, something smoothing, because in real life he's a big like sensual, meditation guy. I'm not making this up. Like that's a big thing for Dylan Cease. He's really about mindfulness and kind of a zen state. So shouts to him. That makes sense. Just something calm. Profar, a specialty pizza that's better than you expected. That's what I'm coming up with Profar. So whether it be mushrooms or pineapple, ham and cheese, I had a Philly cheesesteak pizza the other day. I am very liberal when it comes to pizza. My thing is everybody relax. Clearly people are ordering this because it's good. It's not classic pizza. It's not OG, the original, obviously. Not necessarily better than the original tomato, just nice plain slice or pepperoni or maybe even occasionally some sausage. What I'm saying, better than you expected, because what happened with Jerks and Profar this year? Better than expected, right? So for me, that's like whenever I have some specialty pizza with weird flavors that sounds, whatever, and then it's infinitely better than what you expect. There's probably a better food group to go with that, but alas, that's where I'm at. Jake Cronenworth, mozzarella sticks. Solid, but occasionally amazing. They're always solid, but occasionally amazing. So I'm going with mozz sticks for my guy. And then lastly, Michael King. Again, lazy here. I just mentioned pizza already, but I'm going with it again. A plain slice of pizza. You know why? Because he's from New York. That's where we got him from, man. And he was hanging out there for a while. And we know New York every 3 blocks is an amazing... I'm not kidding, by the way, as a New Jerseyan. Every 3 blocks, you've got a banger pizza place. That doesn't mean that you can only get good pizza in New York, right? That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that the barrier to entry in New York pizza is like, you got to be a banger. There are places in California and Virginia, certainly, and Florida, where it's like, yeah, you can find the pizza place, but it's not a guarantee the way it is on the East Coast, and especially with New York. So Michael King, you must have had some great pizza in there, and I wonder what his pick would be. I wonder what his pick would be for the best pizza spot. I'd love to know that. But guys, with that all being said, that about does it for today's edition of the Locked On Padres podcast, the only pod that may be better than the Padres themselves. Really good vibes. Tomorrow, we may be doing a crossover with Jeff Snyder of Locked On Dodgers. I don't know. He's a little bit busy right now. We might do one final sort of crossover preview of this series. We're going to see how that shakes out. Really great pitching matchups. Padres have some of their best with Cease and King going in this one. So that should be fun. We will be recapping it. But we don't know fully what we're doing for tomorrow's episode. Might do more mailbag questions, frankly, because I didn't go over YouTube and I have that Darvish quote that I got to look up. So yeah, that's about it, guys. Good times. Let them keep rolling. Let them keep rolling. Until that next time, though, stay safe and, of course, stay faithful. My very faithful homies, take care.